Hey, speaking of learn as you earn, that's exactly what our next guest, Scott Bauer, tries to do with his clients. Scott's here to help us take a look at a couple stocks that he's got his eye on. Scott, it's good to have you back. Let's take a look. First of all, this is Scott Bauer. He's the CEO of Prosper Trading Academy. Let me just make that clear. Scott, welcome back to the show. Let's talk healthcare. I saw United Healthcare, ticker UNH, leading the Dow higher today, up over 5% last I looked. What's got healthcare on the move today?
Well, it's what came out of the Trump administration here, and that was big news across the board here for United Healthcare, Cigna, CVS, a lot of the other big healthcare names. They dropped the drug rebate rule. That had really put a big weight on this entire sector over the last 6 months, over the last 9 months. Now that that weight is lifted, obviously some big bullish buying coming into the marketplace today.
So this is interesting though, Scott, because if we take a look at the 5-minute time frame, we can see they ran them up to 185.77, but it looks like after that initial move higher, they're actually coming off a bit here today. Maybe this is kind of one of those situations where it's not necessarily as clear and cut and dry as it may seem initially. I mean, it's not uncommon to hear changes or the position from this administration change or evolve. Possibly investors are a little bit concerned that maybe that could happen here.
No question about it. And there's one I want to look at specifically with Cigna, and that's the one that I'm really worried about. UNH looks really good to me. In fact, from a technical standpoint, it broke through the 200-day moving average on the upside here. Heavy call buying, Ben, over 2-to-1 on really large volume. So if this can remain above that 200-day moving average, UNH really is looking at 275. But Cigna, on the other hand, that made a large run up today, that thing hit massive resistance. And you got a lot of algorithmic selling that came in right about that 184, 185 level here. That's the one that concerns me, that there may have been a big overreaction on the upside this morning.
Well, possibly that's why they're coming off a bit here. But let's talk about CVS Health, because they also got a lift from the news as well, it looks like.
They did, and it was a really nice move up. Now, technically, there is some resistance above the marketplace here around 63 and a half. That, to me, it's got to get through that before I buy in here. However, again, just like with United Healthcare, huge call buying today, over 2.5-to-1 ratio versus puts today. So huge option interest on the call side there.
Yeah, well, we see a reflection of that in terms of price activity. They gapped up big today, and they saw a high, it looks like, up to 60.13, but they pulled back as well, currently trading 57.58, but still up on the day by about 4%. This is a nice move across the board in healthcare. It's not just healthcare today, though, Scott. Let's talk about the banks. Goldman took out the April high today. Looked like it was a new high for the year. Talk to us about what's brought the bid back into the banks. Well, a couple of them at least today.
Absolutely. And, I've been actually very bullish the banks. I've been talking with Oliver Rennick about JP Morgan, and I love the big banks here, and I love them for a couple reasons. Number one, these guys have really withstood the massive, pounding that interest rates took from just over 3% a while ago to just under 2% now. And if you look at JP especially, and then a Morgan Stanley and a Goldman here, you'll see they really withstood that. That, coupled with the fact that the last few months, at least this quarter, we have seen some really nice volatility in the marketplace. When there's decent volatility in the marketplace, these big banks, their trading revenues should really be blowout numbers. To me, that's what I'm looking for when they all report, especially, they're all coming out next week here. I am really looking for some blowout trading numbers. And again, I think they've withstood the massive pressure that we've seen on rates. I love the upside here for Goldman Sachs. I love it for JP. Morgan, I'm a little, I'm kind of wait and see with Morgan, but JP and Goldman for sure.
All right, so is it really just a matter of now kind of waiting for earnings? Because this seems to be a fairly initiative move ahead of earnings, which are coming. We're still days away. I mean, this is certainly an initiative move, and certainly investors expressing a clear opinion here in terms of their expectations for earnings next week.
I think it's a combination of maybe getting ahead of the earnings print a little bit, and also the fact that even though Powell and the Fed is dovish here and everybody expects, at least a quarter cut, a lot of that pressure has been relieved because of the jobs number last week, because of the CPI number that we saw. So a lot of that has been relieved, that rates are going dramatically lower from here. So I think it's setting up kind of that perfect storm here to the upside. And if those numbers are good, look out ahead.
Yeah, I imagine it's not hurting to see rates inching up a bit here as well today. Scott, really appreciate you joining us here for a look at a couple healthcare stocks and some of the banks that are on the move ahead of earnings. We'll maybe have you back here to preview some of the earnings, and certainly the bullish approach or sentiment towards these stocks has been right over the last few weeks since the beginning, or first week or so since June. Traders, at Scott Bauer. He's the CEO of Prosper Trading Academy, joining us here on Midday Movers. Coming up next is